hello, and welcome back to another episode of Office Hours Career Paths for PhDs. My name is Dr. Jasmin Goodman. I am your host, and I am excited to share yet another PhD story with you. As you know, this series is dedicated to telling the stories of PhDs who are bold enough to take leaps outside of academia, although we still love our PhDs that decided to remain in academia. We just want to explore all of the career options that are out there and also tell stories that you may not have heard before. With that said, I want to introduce our guest today, Dr. Ashley Goodwin. She is an advisor and DEI lead. She earned her PhD in creative leadership for innovation and change at the University of the Virgin Islands. I'm going to now bring her to the stage. Dr. Goodwin.
Hi, Dr. Jasmin. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for joining the Office Hours podcast. I have been really curious about your background and just kind of your PhD experience. That seems like a really exciting topic. So I'm excited that you're here to tell your story.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here as well to share my story with you and everyone watching.
Okay, so let's jump right into it. So when you started your PhD program, what prompted you to pursue, well, I'll even take it back. What prompted you to pursue the PhD in the first place?
I would say I always came up with really novel ideas, and I would call myself a creative, and I'm a creative scholar for one, but for two, I've always needed a method to my madness. I feel like, I always had these novel ideas that led towards an innovative product, but then people will want to know how I got there and how I reached that conclusion. And so I felt as though the PhD would provide more, again, credentials and provide more, I guess, stature to what I was already trying to do and where I already was thinking, where my mind was going. I'm a very imaginative, big picture person. And I really thought that the PhD would really give me the tools that I needed to substantiate myself in the field.
Okay. And so when you say that you're a creative scholar, kind of tell me more about what that means to you.
So what does creativity mean? Creativity is not just the world of the arts. Creativity has over like 40 definitions, and the field is over 50 years old. And so it's the science of problem solving, of thinking creatively. And what does that mean? How to solve problems, how to generate solutions and have lots of solutions that you are judgment free from. And so one of my favorite definitions is from my dissertation chair, which is novelty. Creativity is novelty that is transformative. Wow. And that's important to me. How are we using our novel ideas to make transformational changes in organizations, within ourselves and the people that we work with and the places that we serve as well?
Right. And that's such a beautiful way to describe creativity, because right now I feel like we're in this creative boom where everybody is, oh, I'm a creative. I do this, I do that. It's like, what exactly does that mean? So
right.
I'm glad and grateful that you were able to kind of break it down. And so I think you said creativity is the science of problem solving.
Yes, to me, as the science of problem solving, my dissertation chair, Dr. Puccio, who was really instrumental in the journey for me, which was really giving me the tools necessary to be myself, and felt like that sense of belonging. Because I'm a diversity, equity, inclusion lead, I could not have, gotten to that point without getting those tools to feel like I belong. And I've used the creative skills that I've learned and acquired throughout, my master's program in creative studies from Buffalo State University now, to make diversity, equity, inclusion digestible. To create bite-sized chunks of creative activities where people are able to receive these difficult conversations, because diversity, equity, inclusion, it can be very difficult to talk about, difficult to receive, difficult to create action steps. But with creativity, you can build a whole initiative or an action plan with these activities when you're changing the lens to help change the perception of others.
Okay, well, please tell your chair and your advisor to put that on a t-shirt, a mug. I will buy that. And I think that that's a great way to even frame just the doctoral process. We often think that it's just research oriented, but there's creativity in that, whether it's research design or asking new and different questions. So there's a lot of creativity that's a part of that. Now I want to learn more about when you went into your doctoral program.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think you were going to do?
So big shout out to UVI, University of the Virgin Islands, Dr. Maryann and the whole team. Listen, what I thought I was going into in 2016, I thought, you have your master's and you're like, okay, I think I already know what I'm going to do. That's not the case. What I thought I was going to do turned out to be something different. It turned out to be
Okay.
a little outdated. And so for my thinking, and so
Mhm.
just thinking that I wouldn't have to do so much writing, thinking that I had already the steps already outlined for myself was not the case. And I was challenged. I was championed, and I also was pushed to be my better self, to speak better, to present better, and also to be able to be a strong defender of my scholarship and my work.
Okay. Now, at what point did your career goals start to crystallize?
I would say now, right now,
Okay. Okay.
this is the point. I feel like I have been on a constant climb. I was not only have I worked in academia, I worked on the student affairs side of the house.
Okay.
I was working as a resident director, working as a student activities coordinator. So I did a lot of activities for the incoming students, from they call them first year students now to senior students as well. And
Mhm.
so it started to crystallize once I graduated. Once I graduated, excuse me, I'll say that in 2018, as soon as I graduated, I got the opportunity to be a keynote in Hyderabad, India. Um,
Wow.
and that was life changing. I've never been to India before. University of Virgin Islands hosted their doctoral candidates a conference, and I was invited to keynote speak there right after I graduated. And after that, the doors of speaking engagements and the doors of me feeling purpose to actually speak to people about diversity, inclusion, and creativity, and how they champion with one another started to happen. And when I say now, I feel like I am respected. I'm coming out of the gate swinging in 2018 with this new creative scholarship talking about diversity and inclusion. Well, what is that, right? So I took the time from 2018 to meet with other people to kind of, really solidify my place in this field. And I feel like now is the moment where things are really starting to take off. Just this month, I've been to LA. I have been to Charleston, South Carolina to speak and really be flown out just for my opinion on diversity, equity, inclusion. On is this really, the way we should be going, or they're not necessarily approval, but really, really wanting to know what my opinion is, and that's big. I've went from being in places where I was struggling to be heard, struggling to find my own voice, to people wanting to know what I have to say, and that's big for me.
You just said a lot of great things, but I want to make one pop culture reference. Some girls are flued out for one thing, but you're flued out for your opinion, which is what
Yeah. Oh yeah. I got flued out for my opinion. And
I
pop culture, I'm big on pop culture. I really when I was struggling with trying to say, should I Facebook post? I just got flued out for my for my
guess.
opinion.
So see,
And
okay. So now with a creative leadership PhD, which won 2 years, wow. My program was 4 years and I wanted to quit every single semester. So I would love to even just talk about how they were able to pull all that together, where you were able to kind of go deep enough in the subject matter. But with the creative leadership, what were your professors, what types of careers were they encouraging you to pursue before you kind of found your own path?
one thing that I loved about the program is that they were not traditional to other academic programs. They were not trying to put us in a box.
Yeah.
And that was this program is the first of its kind. I want to champion myself in this moment and say I am the first Black woman to attain this degree in the world because it is the first of its kind. But the professors really did not put us in a box. They wanted us to make this dissertation and this degree our own. The people who are my colleagues, shout out to the pioneers, our first class, they were in so many different roles. They were in politics, they were in law, they were and public service, academia, and different things. And so, how does creative leadership for innovation and change degree work for your career path? And so, it was really a creative, innovative way, no pun intended, to make sure that we can shape this program for ourselves.
Right. And I think that makes sense on multiple levels. One, if you are an innovative and creative program, you're not going to do what's standard for, and I won't even say standard because PhD programs takes many different shapes and sizes, but it still see that what you all are doing there is pretty innovative. But also, too, what I love about what you just said is that you have to make it work for you, which is an expression that we have on this show where we say, create your own definition of success. So we talk about, and I mentioned earlier, some people want to go down the tenure track. Great, go do that. Some people want to be a college president, Godspeed. But it's all about finding the path that works for you and utilizing the tools that you have to get you there. So moving this forward, what were some resources or activities that you used to help build this vision for your career?
I would say I didn't go the conventional route. And even though I did work in academia a little bit, I kind of made sure that I networked with people. Network equaling your net worth and increases your platform. And I think it's important for really to say, put yourself out there, but put yourself out where, really identifying your own audiences. And I have a public relations background. So I use that to campaign for myself, to create a campaign for myself of, listen, it's time for you to glow up. How are you going to do that? So let's create a campaign for yourself to get on different stages, get around different spaces, and shake hands and introduce yourself to different people. So I would say social media, of course, is a different tool. I would say creating different things for yourself as far as campaigns and magazines, like posts and different things like that. Just reaching out to people and not being afraid to do that. Reaching out to people for them to interview you as well. Hello, are you interested in an interview on such and such and such? And so really, I would say my tools are using your voice, communicating with others to increase your platform.
Now, how did you decide on what you wanted your platform to be? So it's you talked about building relationships and connecting with people, but once you get on the stage, how did you decide what you were going to talk about?
Right. So sometimes people may have requests, but also it's about being authentic. I would say that for sure. What are you passionate about? What can you get on stage and really show your inner light about? So what are you so we have saying in creativity, which is everyone is creative in the area of their strength. And so I'm strong in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging and authenticity. So I knew that those pieces I could talk about all day, and I can get up there and talk about it with strength and confidence and courage, and people will listen. When you know your subject matter and you are excited about it, you can empower others to be just as excited about it as well. And so those topics kind of come natural to me because if I'm passionate about something, I can deliver a topic very well.
Now, tell me about your very first speaking experience. If you can walk us through, how they got the request or how you reached out to them all the way through, exiting the stage.
So I would say my first professional one, I'm going to go with India because that's a different stage. This is a global stage now. And so I've spoken to in the creativity in Nigeria program, and that was virtual, but that was still a different and global audience. And so LinkedIn has been, people have been reaching out via that, and that has been awesome as well. But I would say reaching out, I would again use my public relations skills to have a headshot of myself, a brief bio, and my topic, and ask the company if they are looking for this type of topic and to contact me. And if I was to get a bite, which I have, I would then set up a call like this and for us to kind of chat and get together. But my first engagement, going back to India, I was so nervous. I flew, halfway across the world. The time change, you're trying to get yourself together. You don't, I look different. than those who were there. And so it's always that, for me, walking into a room, being the first or the only, that's important to me as my truth, and how I show up in that space is to take up space. And so I did that. I took a deep breath and I dived in, even though I was nervous. But I did have some faculty there to support me. So I kind of like took some breaths, got some water, and kept going.
Okay. A couple things there. So I didn't disclose this, but my background is also in communication as well. So I love when you talked about PR. You said headshot, bio, and a topic, and then even just having your assets in place. So the bio, the headshot, and a list of topics you could talk about. You also had your process in place in terms of, okay, if you would love to set up a call, you already had that part of it kind of figured out.
Yeah.
That's excellent. And I think it's important that when you are developing your platform, you don't have to go out and spend a lot of money. I mean, it helps to have like some really nice and glossy photos, but if you just have something that pulls your professional identity together and it makes you look more polished, people respect that. It goes a long way. Now, tell me, what were some of the early challenges you experienced as once you graduated and you were out into the world? What was that like for you?
I would say it was difficult, and it was difficult because who are you? You're new, you're I guess fresh out, right? And so you're fresh out of the program. Yes, you have a PhD, but what is it in? Tell me what just the constant challenge from other PhDs to validate my program, and to validate my, not even necessarily my program, but my work. Tell me more about your work. Tell me why it's impactful. And that's just off of saying hello. Hi, I'm Dr. Ashley Goodwin. And they would say, oh, okay, well, where'd you go? What did you study? Oh, tell me about your dissertation. And I understand, PhDs, our nature is to challenge, right? But what about, let's build a network relationship first before we get into that. So I think the culture shift was different for me. I'm going into from a more friendly high, shaking hands, to okay, I want to challenge you just a little bit before we become collaborators. So that I think the culture shift was different to kind of get into first.
Right. And I think I've had moments where people I don't know if I would refer to it as challenged, but they're very inquisitive. And you just kind of realize that what's driving the line of questioning isn't their interest. They want to understand, oh, you have a PhD. What did you study? And it's just like, do I need to roll up my fist? Like,
do I? Yeah. And I think, just to be transparent, for me, I'll say, I just came to mind, what biggest challenge for me is being called Dr. Goodwin, because of how I look. And I guess some people say I look young. And in academia, people would question and like, who's Dr. Goodwin? So I remember, in a couple of different spaces, I would be getting called up to a podium and people will be waiting for Dr. Goodwin, and I'd be standing right there. And so it's important that, with diversity, equity, inclusion, that we don't, this age bias has to be gone, because education and brilliance has no age. And so with that, I'm going to show up in spaces whether I look young or not. And that's that. So, and I like to thank, my parents and Melanin for that too. So that's that.
Okay. Now, in addition to your speaking work, what other types of work are you doing these days?
So I've done some internal consulting, and also done some external consulting when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion training, certifications. I've worked with the United States Airforce, coming with cognitive diversity appreciation, which is part of my scholarship that I developed, that really talks about that implicit bias and neurodiversity and cognitive diversity, and how people express themselves and how they're brought into the circle or amplify their voices as well. And so right now I really am just doing the internal consulting with the company, and just being sought out right now, and for different interviews to speak about that. And I'm just looking for different opportunities to continue to network.
Right. So sought out and flued out is what
Ah,
I'm
sought out and flued out.
right now. Now, tell me, how were you able to translate your dissertation? I know you just mentioned that. How were you able to translate your dissertation into an actionable product or a platform for your services?
Um, I uh, hmm. I would say how I was able to translate it was into an assessment, something being really real for organizations. What's real for you? What is so that we know that we're solving the right problem? We want to know what the real issue is. Is the real issue communication? Is it trust? Is it decision making? And how does that translate to diversity, equity, inclusion, or how does that combine or work together? And so with that, I really took an internal assessment of what I thought companies are plagued with, which is people feeling like they don't belong or
Mhm.
they can't feel like they're authentic because, ooh, if I do that, I might not get promoted. My voice might not be amplified or other things. And so when you take those really real moments, you can take a real human approach to diversity, equity, inclusion, and people can change their own perceptions when they change their lens and think about things in a non-conventional way and bring fresh eyes to it.
Okay. Now, I know that you more than anyone has noticed this. 2020, there were a lot of DEI jobs out there, and companies were plagued with guilt, and they were opening up all these roles and sharing all these statements about, why it's important. But now with layoffs happening, what are your thoughts around the longevity of DEI programs now that summer 2020 and that guilt seems to have worn off for some
Mm.
institutions?
And so I've noticed that. I have noticed that. I'm happy to be where that's not the case, and I'm happy to where you're walking the walk and talking the talk.
Mhm.
I think the longevity is in the action, really showing the importance of why this needs to be interweaved in all the programs within the companies. I say a lot. Diversity, equity, inclusion needs to be within the DNA of the company. It needs to be within the hearts and the brain of the company. Who are the brains of the company? The
Mhm.
stakeholders, and not because they're smarter, but because they're the decision makers. So who are the brains of the company? Who is the heart of the company? The associates and the organizations and everybody who makes it has to be in alignment. And diversity, equity, inclusion is not just about, even though it's important, about race, social justice, and all these different things. It's about the diversity you can't see, right? Let's talk
Mhm.
about how you think and how you present yourself to the table and how you get opportunities based off of how you express yourself. You could be an internal processor. You could be an external processor, someone or internal processor, someone who is not speaking up during a meeting, but now is not given an opportunity because they are looked at as they're not being a value add.
Got it.
And
Wow.
so how do you look at diversity, equity, inclusion for a more human perspective, more neuro perspective, and so that we can change our perception, because our perception starts with how we think and then how we behave and how we perform. So that's my approach. And I know that if companies take that approach and reach out to experts who can do that, then the
Mhm.
longevity is there, because diversity has so many different facets and we have to tap into all of them so that
Right.
we, and also diversity is, and I say this a lot too, that diversity is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Shout out to Nipsey Hustle. It's not. It is not a sprint. And some companies are only taking their first lap around, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But you have to take more laps so we can get to where we need to go and pass the baton to others also, so we also can make progress.
One thing you said there that really just stood out when you talked about like being an internal processor. I know that especially since I've been out of my doctoral program and I've worked in industry, just consulting, doing commercial research, we'll come out of a day of doing field work and everybody has like we're doing a debrief and everyone has all these ideas. I'm like, wait, we just finished doing the field work. How do you
Yeah.
already have all this stuff? And so for me, I learned in that process that I need time to kind of take a step back and then come up with ideas or suggestions or potential new routes. And so I felt like something was wrong with me because I couldn't process as quickly as they could because I'm not used to that. Normally in academia, we take our transcripts, we start coding and we do all of that. We have time to think through this process. But in corporate work, everyone just kind of spits out a lot of things, and you can be viewed in a different way if you're not, rattling off 10 insights 10 minutes after you get out of focus group. So that's interesting work. What are some ways that you have leveraged your PhD in just so is it like a business? Are you doing independent consulting? Like, how does that?
Yes. So I would say I was before, my primary role, I was external consulting with the Maverick Agency, and I was, the lead chief diversity officer, a person who was going out consulting with different groups, again, the United States Air Force, virtually in Nigeria, Hyderabad, India, when I was outside of the program. So really just taking that role to go ahead and network and put myself out in the places where people are looking and seeking out diversity.
Right. No, that's awesome. And that even ties back into what you shared about having those media assets in place. So when you go places, you can be well represented, or you have your expertise can be well represented. What are some other ways that, let's say if somebody wants to build a platform or build a speaking platform, what are some media outlets or blogs? Where should they look to place themselves for these opportunities?
So like namely the ones that I'm on, or just in general?
You can share both.
Okay, so I would honestly say invest in creating your own website as well. I'm working with and I'm just going to say it. I work is listed in the front. I work at Ingram Micro. It's an awesome company, voted great place to work. Great people. They are very open to diversity, equity, inclusion, and committed. I think it's different when it's coming from the top down. I think that's important when you see that people are committed from the top down. That speaks volumes. And so, prior to me working there, that's one of my references. Go to my website and look me up. Okay. Go on LinkedIn and look me up. But also look how I've invested in my brand, that I created a website for myself that is out there for the world to see with just a click of a button. So invest in these websites where you can build a brand for yourself and a voice. You can amplify your own voice. You can self-publish. You can do all these different things by yourself. You don't need a big someone backing you for you to open your mouth and say something that's important. And so that I would say that invest in yourself and invest in your brand. Even when you are with a company, invest on what your executive presence is. That's important.
Ooh. Let's talk more about executive presence. What is it? How does it work? How do we do that?
Executive presence for me is showing up and showing out. And what does that mean? Sometimes you're not always invited to a space, but sometimes you have to invite yourself to a space. Sometimes you have to campaign and be authentic of who you are, campaign for yourself. Speak, I hate the word eloquently, speak authentically and boldly in who you are and what you know. Create, redefine what your brand is, how you look. Is it red lips, bold lips? Because I'm not afraid to wear lipstick.
Yes,
I had, a close associate who said, I'm so inspired that you wear lipstick. Like I don't do that. And I think that, a lot of us, Black women, we always second guess ourselves in corporate spaces. And, Black and brown women, sometimes we do that. And put your lipstick on, put your earrings on, put your pearls on, put your necklace on, be bold. We can't be ruled by people trying to exotify us. You still have to show up in the space. And that executive space means really being you and not dressing for the job that you have, or the one that you want, right? And so really walking in that space and taking it up a notch every time.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think about how I really rejected being, and I'll say like girly girl, but like dressing up and doing all of that because I didn't want to call attention to myself. I just wanted to focus on the work. And it's finally been beat in my head through just experiences that you need to show up and show out. You need to have that executive presence. It is not about you leveraging, your looks. It's about walking in authority and allowing others to see that you are that authority. So I get it. I
Oh
get
yeah.
it. And I think it's also interesting too, especially coming out of academia where it can be very casual at times and don't have to necessarily do that. But in these new and different spaces, you need to understand what executive presence looks like for you and then commit to showing up daily.
Oh yeah, and listen. I know this. My parents instilled this in me, but I also know this is my God-given right to be myself. It is, and to be the best version of myself every time, and to just keep knocking it out of the park. Don't be afraid to be awesome.
Now, that's actually because that leads us into our mentorship moment. So you've had all of these different experiences, but what would you say to someone who they have that creative spark, but they're not quite sure how to nurture it coming out of a doctoral program?
I would say don't second guess yourself. Make a list and prioritize what you can do in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, the halfway mark, and then the 1 year mark. Prioritize 3 to 5 things of what you want to do or how you want to challenge yourself to glow in a different space, whether it's your executive presence, your own brand, or your career goals. So really, and don't second guess it. If it comes to your mind, it's in your heart and you're passionate about it, write it down and make a plan for it.
Wow. And what are just some parting words that you want to share with our community? This has been such a great interview. And I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm not sure when we're going to post this, but it will be great to have some type of like challenge to come out. Like after talking to you, I want to take this and make it actionable. So I kind of want to challenge our community because one, it helps to I've learned from myself that once I'm inspired, I have to take action quickly. If I don't, then I lose the spark.
Yeah.
And what helps that is being within a community of people who are also willing to put in the work to nurture that spark and that creativity and that inspiration. So we will have to talk offline about how we can create something or how we can support PhDs who are wanting to pursue new and different paths, or even just stepping into who they've been called to be, because the PhD takes you through a lot.
Oh yeah, it does.
One that stays the same after the process.
No, my my short-term memory still needs some work. It still needs
to tell you, my memory was shot.
My speech was shot, I felt like too.
my rest. That's the one thing I noticed when I came home. My mom was like, "You don't sleep." You sleep too much. And I was just like, yeah, because I'm all over the place. Like physically it did a lot. So but I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your experience, sharing even just what creativity, relating that back to how I can still be a part of the academic process, the science of problem solving. This has been wonderful. Now, how can people learn more about you and the work that you do?
And so I am working on a little my brand, like I've been saying for the interview. And so my website, my personal website, is gonna take a little bit more construction. It's under construction right now. I'm doing a rebrand. At first, it was for the company I was working with all those years before, but now I really want to focus on more of my name. So when people are looking for me, they don't have to search for anything else but, hey, I want to find her. So let's find Dr. Ashley C. Goodwin. So it's under construction, but I would say for now, please find me on LinkedIn. I am happy to talk, to chat, inspire, to mentor, and also to connect with those who I can learn from as well. You're the smartest in the room, walk through another doorway. So iron sharpens iron, and I'd love to be around people I can learn from as well.
And what we'll do, once your website is finalized, we can just put it in the show notes so others can check you out and just see all of your brilliance.
Thank you so much. This was an amazing, amazing time speaking and connecting with you. And all you PhDs out there, continue striving, continue taking up space in every space that you walk in, and do not be afraid to be awesome.
Yes. All right. Thank y'all so much for watching. Make sure you click that subscribe button and share this with the PhD that you love.